Hey, everybody, it's Scott Steen with winnersandwhiners.com coming to you with the Tuesday edition of Today in Sports Betting. And man, it finally feels like a little bit of normalcy here. I don't know. We'll talk about that. But you know what? We're going to take a look at Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball that has an actual schedule in place, odds and projections for who's in, who's out, who's going to be not playing due to the corona. And we're going to talk about all that today. We're going to start off with the East. We're going to break it into three different days, looking at the East, the Central, and the West. And that's basically because that's where all the games are going to be played. But again, we'll talk about that soon enough. And who better to do it with? You know, you love him. He is my co-pilot, my partner in crime. He is the one and only Scott Reichel. Good morning, Scott. How are you?
Doing pretty well. Happy my Wi-Fi's cooperating today. So it definitely seemed like it was a one-day issue. But yeah, looking forward to breaking down the NL East and the AL East today. It's going to feel a little bit like a deja vu because I feel like we did this a couple months ago, but times change, and now we have a definitive plan for the upcoming season, at least for now. So for that reason, looking forward to doing it again.
The times they are a change, and it was nice of them to completely sit out the part where the virus was receding. And now they're going to be starting back up again as the virus appears to be ascending again. Although, I don't know. I don't know about you, Scott. I'm sick of virus talk.
So am I. But at the end of the day, I feel like for the sake of the sports world, it's still a pretty important.
It is. It is. It's hard. It's hard to avoid when it comes to any topic, really. And as far as the effect that the virus is going to have. But so it's we're gonna have to grit our teeth and go through it. But you know what? Let's start off with a little baseball, man. Let's start off with some good news here. Again, as I explained in the opener, we're going to take a look by region, and basically because all the teams in the East are going to be confined to other teams in the East in their own league and the National League or the other league as well, however you look at it. So there'll be no teams from the East playing the West, no teams from the West playing the Central, et cetera, et cetera. All games will be confined within that region. So that's why we're going to break this up and do it. We're going to start with the National League, taking a look at the National League East. And this is a very, very competitive division, at least on paper. That's how the odds makers have it. They have the Braves and the Nats as co-favorites. And again, you may have different numbers on this. I've got the Braves and the Nats at plus 200, the Phillies plus 300, Mets plus 350. And the Marlins, plus 7,000. So if you want to take a little spin on the Marlins at 70-1, God bless you. Again, remember, this is a 60-game season. And the win totals that I have, Braves 33.5, Nats 33.5. The odd thing is here, Scott, I don't know if you have this on your books as well. The Mets, even though they're plus 350 and the Phillies are plus 300, the Mets actually have a higher win total than the Phillies do. It seems to be kind of an aberration there. Mets win totals 32.5, Phillies at 30.5, while the Marlins again check in at 24.5. So, is that what you're finding on your books as well?
I have slightly different lines, so it's not, I'd say, the same. But for the most part, it does seem like this division is relatively up in the air. I think it's a little bit too up in the air, if you ask me, just based on some of the teams we're about to talk about. But if you wanted to break it down, looking at some of the lines available here. As of right now, I see the Braves as the favorites on my respective books here. I see the Braves are at plus 215 on DraftKings, and I see that the Nationals, for example, are plus 250, followed by the Mets, who are plus 275. So I see it being relatively close, but I also don't see a split favorite here. I see the Braves being slightly favored over the Nationals to lift the division trophy at the end of the year.
And you don't have that weird little aberration between the Mets and the Phillies where the Phillies have a lower win total than the Mets and lower odds.
No, I see the Mets at plus 275 and I see the Phillies at plus 325.
Okay. All right. So let's and we'll go through each of the teams briefly. We'll probably spend a little more time at the top. That's human nature. We're not going to we're probably going to spend more time on the Braves than we will on the Marlins. So if you're a big Marlins fan looking for us to break down the intricacies of their 60-man taxi squad, probably not going to happen. But we're going to talk about the probabilities and possibilities of each of these teams. So let's start with the Braves. I think you're probably like me, Scott. I think this is the far and away the best team in this division. And it really all begins with that starting pitching staff for the Braves. Trotting out Mike Soroka, who we've talked about before, had a huge breakthrough season last year. We rode him hard. Mike Soroka made a lot of money for us, both on the premium side and on the deep three side with my picks last year. And I'm assuming you rode him a little bit as well. They picked up Cole Hamels. Mike Fultonevich is another fine arm in that bullpen, or excuse me, in the starting rotation. He's the third starter, Max Fried. And the fifth starter, now they're going to try to plug in King Felix there and see what happens. I think they're going to have a pretty short leash on him. They've still got Newcomb. They've got Tuki Toussaint. So they've got some guys that they can plug into that fifth spot in the rotation.
And they brought in Cole Hamels. So that should help.
Well, yeah, they got Cole Hamels is slotted in the two spot there in the rotation.
No, I'm just saying. So even in addition to bringing back some of the younger arms or some of the guys who had success last year, they also managed to bring in a little bit of a splash for consistency purposes.
Right.
Of course, I think Cole Hamels is not the same guy he once was. It's very tough to be the same guy for that long of a period of time as Cole Hamels was. I don't know if elite starting pitcher is a strong word or too strong of a word, but he definitely was a very solid pitcher back a couple of years ago when he was still on the Phillies. But, yeah, I feel like we've talked about the Braves before. I mentioned them for a World Series ticket. They're my pick to win the division if I had to pick anybody. I know the Nationals will get to because they've had some news with regard to some players potentially opting out of the restart. Braves haven't had anything like that. But this lineup is just ridiculous. I know that they ended up losing. Josh is definitely going to hurt. But at the end of the day, this team is just so deep from just a talent perspective offensively. And even at the end of last year, they ended up throwing in Adam Duvall, who kind of had a second coming of his career because he was phenomenal in the Reds. His career kind of fell apart. Then the Braves put him in the minor leagues. He ended up being called up in the middle of last year. And he was great ever since they called him up. And now that the Braves can actually use a DH for the entire season, this lineup's only going to get better. And for that reason, I just think the Braves have a little bit too much firepower offensively to go with their pretty solid rotation. And their bullpen with Melanson, Will Smith, who was a huge addition that they got, Darren O'Day, Shane Green, Luke Jackson. It's a pretty solid bullpen as well. I think this team's just solid from top to bottom. There's really not much I can complain about when it comes to analyzing this team.
Yeah, and they may have arguably the best player in the National League in Ronald Acuna Jr. playing right field, and it's just I think they have may not have the best rotation in the division, but they certainly have a very, very fine rotation. It's only because the Nats rotation is so good, but they have plenty of firepower to take care of business day in and day out. I'm with you. I like the Braves at plus money there. I've got a win total at 33.5, and I'm gonna have to play the over on that one, Scott. There's going to be some tough divisional games. There are going to be some tough games against the American League East as well for this Braves team. But at the end of the day, I think they're going to be on top, and to be on top, I think you're going to have to win more than 33 games. So I'm going to take them to win the division, and I'm going to take them on the over as well. And just to remind our viewers, each team is going to play the other teams in their division 10 times, and they're going to play the other 5 teams in the corresponding division 4 times. So they'll play 2 home, 2 away. And so that gives you 40 games within your division, 20 games within the American League East, as the case may be for the Braves. So I think you and I both like the Braves here quite a bit. The team that, of course, is going to be the main challenge to them is going to be the Washington Nationals. And the Nationals, as always, are going to live and die by their pitching with the 2 massive horses up front, Max Scherzer, Steven Strasburg. They've got Patrick Corbin and Anibal Sanchez, who had a rebound year last year, had a very, very fine year, and Austin Voth, who had come on at the end of last season as well. The problem with the Nats is always, well, first of all, they lose a little bit of firepower as far as their lineup goes, And you touched on it briefly. They've also had Ryan Zimmerman opt out, and they've also had Joe Ross, who was going to be competing for that 5th spot. He is opted out as well. So, Scott, give me your thoughts on the Nats here.
Overall for the Nats, I think it's going to be very, very tough, needless to say, for them to defend or even make the playoffs, to be honest. Looking at the rotation, of course, their top 3 are as solid as they come in the entire league. You got Scherzer, who's ridiculous. You got Strasburg, who signed an extension. He's back, which is also, he proved last year in the playoffs. He's an elite starter. And then you have Corbin, who the Nationals paid a lot of money to. People questioned at the time. And, he helped lead them to a World Series. So, I think in hindsight, that signing was a pretty good one. Anibal Sanchez getting up there in age, but he was still pretty solid last year. And Austin Voth, not really that familiar with. I think the Nats might have upgraded over the last 24 hours when Joe Ross decided not to come back, because I don't think he's really that good. But Ryan Zimmerman, definitely a loss. Not as big of a loss as losing Rendon during the offseason, which, of course, is the main cog that they're going to be unable to replace. If you want to look at the actual lineup or the projections here, you bring in Eric Thames. You got Carter Kieboom, third base, so kind of an up-and-coming prospect who they expect big things out of. Juan Soto is still going to be the guy. I still love him as a player. I think he's tremendous. And other than that, though, the bullpen, even though it was very good for the postseason run, still awful in the regular season. And I don't really know which type of bullpen you're going to see. Are they going to revert back to the way they normally did during it's 60 games this season, but you know what I mean? Or are they going to look a lot better like than the postseason last year? I got to assume they're going to look similar to the regular season self, especially with the lack of a full training camp in this very unique situation in spring training. So for that reason, I love the rotation. I love Juan Soto. Everything else on the team looks pretty expendable to me. So for that reason, I'm not really expecting big things from the Nationals this year. I think they'll finish somewhere around 500. So for me, I'm not really interested in any futures, etc.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm just not sold. I'm not sold that the lineup is going to have enough firepower, and I'm not sold on the bullpen, especially Sean Doolittle as the closer. I don't think they upgraded enough in the offseason to make, for my money, a serious contender. I think they're overvalued at this point. I would fade the Nats as far as being in the National League East, doing any damage there. Is it possible they could sneak through for a wild card? Maybe.
With that rotation, anything's possible. But you also have to wonder, A, how sharp the pitchers are going to be, and B, with the full interesting spring training, are they going to let Scherzer and Strasburg go 8 innings in a game, 7 innings in a game? If not, you got a couple extra innings of bullpen work there, and that's not exactly a ringing endorsement.
Yeah, I think most teams, from what I've read, I think most teams are going to tend toward using the bullpen a lot, especially early, looking to get 4 and 5 innings out of their starters, and that is not a recipe for success
for the Nationals.
No,
yeah.
They don't. I don't think they have enough firepower, especially without Rendon. I don't think they have enough firepower to win games. 7-4, 9-6, that kind of thing. I don't.
Yeah, in addition to Soto, I also am a pretty big Trey Turner fan. But you bring in Sterling Castro as your second baseman. I guess you need somebody to potentially be an RBI guy to replace Rendon. Bold call. I think I'd rather have Rendon than Sterling Castro. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and they've got Howie Kendrick. They're going to be able to sneak him in as the DH, which is good. They're good. They're good behind the plate. Kurt Suzuki and Yan Gomes, good 1-2 catching combination. One of the best probably in the major leagues as far as both catchers being high quality, but neither one of them huge bats. Suzuki acceptable. Both these guys are probably going to be in the 250, 260 range. I'm anxious to see what Kai Boom does at third base. I don't know that, I was going to say given a full season. Of course, this won't be a full season, but it'll be his first really full-time opportunity. So we'll see what happens there. I guess everything could click into place, and the bullpen could be better than we think, and the
I,
offense doesn't have as much
yeah.
of a drop off as we anticipate. But for my money, I'm avoiding the Nats.
The way that I see it is that a lot more needs to go right in order for the Nats to be successful than for
Yeah,
them to be unsuccessful. So for that reason, I would lean to the under, and I don't think they're going to win the division.
yeah. Well, I agree with that. So let's talk about who might challenge the Braves, if anybody. We get into the Phillies here. Phillies, if you look at it on paper, they've got a decent lineup. They picked up Didi Gregorius. They have they have a decent pitching staff with Nola. They got Zach Wheeler from the Mets. They've got Jake Arrieta, Zach Eflin, and Nick Pivetta.
And they got an absolute steal on their contract situation with Bryce Harper, right?
Well, they did okay. They've got Harper, and we talked about him a little bit when we did our overview last week. Harper ended up having a better season than I think a lot of people thought he did.
I know, but he's got another decade to make up to become, I'd say, a potential World Series winner before the Phillies fans eventually start booing him. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see. And any value on the Phillies? I've got them plus 300, and I've got them 30.5 as far as the win total goes, which would be just one game over 500. Scott, I don't think there's enough value there to win the division. I don't hate the over. I like the Nats under, by the way, under 33.5 is what I have that at win total. I don't hate the Phillies. They're sliding into second place, winning 31 games. Your thoughts on that?
I definitely think that makes sense. First of all, in addition to the actual roster, which has a pretty solid amount of talent, anytime you lose Gabe Kapler, I think that's a massive upgrade. So that is definitely worth mentioning. I think this team should look better under new management, and I think that should help out. If you want to go through the actual team, you should be getting Andrew McCutchen back, who looked really good early in the year last year before he suffered a serious leg injury.
Right.
But his season short, so that definitely hurt the team. Other than that, though, they spent a ton of money to bring in Zach Wheeler. In my opinion, a little bit too much money, but hey, they realized the rotation wasn't exactly up to par, and they decided to splurge for a pretty high-risk, high-reward guy, so we'll see what happens there. But I like the initiative that they realized they had an issue. Their bullpen, I still think, is atrocious. Anytime you have Hector Neris as your closer, I don't think that's a recipe for success. So I think that will be an issue, especially as we talked about before, how starters might be pitching a little bit shorter in terms of outings, and you're going to need a pretty good bullpen to pick up the slack, and I just don't think the Phillies have that. But for the lineup, I'm a huge Real Muto guy. I think he's the best catcher in baseball. You got Hoskins, who low average, a lot of pop, a lot of RBI potential. Kingery's a pretty decent second baseman. Segura's pretty good at third base. Didi's a good hitter at short. McCutchen, assuming he's anywhere near the same guy he was last year in the small sample size, he should be pretty good. You got Bryce Harper, of course, who's still a very solid player. And you got Jay Bruce at the DH. So overall, pretty good lineup. The rotation is, I'd say, okay. I don't know what to expect from Arrieta because he ended up having season-ending surgery last year as they had to shut his season down. He got some injury issues. I don't know if he's anywhere near the same guy that he once was. Age suggests probably not, but he still should be pretty serviceable. I still love Nola. And other than that, though, this team on paper is pretty good. I'd say not great, but I think this team has a pretty solid chance to come in second place at season end. So that's my thoughts on there. Do I think they're going to make the playoffs? No. But I think that it's close. I think they'll finish a little bit short because of that bullpen. But you're looking at this division, I think they'll be better than the Nationals, if that means anything.
Yeah, I agree with that. And this is, I think, after Nola, really the entire rotation is kind of made up of high risk, high reward guys.
That Eflin kind of shocked me last year. He was actually pretty good.
Yeah, and then you got to look for them to repeat. Can they do it more than one season once the league has had a chance to really make adjustments to them? We'll see what happens. I like the offense on this team. I think they're going to have enough pitching to to get it done. I don't quite hate Hector Neris as much as you do, but
no, I was just saying if Hector Neris is your closer, the rest of your bullpen isn't exactly a strength.
well, that's true. They're a team that's going to have to outscore you to win. I mean, obviously that's a stupid thing to say on the surface, but you know what I mean. They're gonna have to win those. They're gonna have to win those 7-4 games and those 9-6 games, etc.
Breaking news: Phillies need to score more runs than opponents in order to win games.
Yeah, it's we pretty much major in hot takes here at Today in Sports Betting. So those are just the kind of hot takes that you've come to expect from us. So you're welcome. Yeah, I like this team. Again, all these teams in the East, it's going to be a tough slog because you've got quality teams in the AL East from top to bottom with the very last team accepted, and you have the same situation in the NL East. You have quality teams 1 through 4 with the last place team accepted as well. So there's very few easy wins on this schedule, but I do think the Phillies, somebody's got to win games, and I think the Phillies eke over that total of 30.5 and possibly sneak into the playoffs depending on how everything breaks, but doubtful. All right, so let's talk about your hometown team there. I know you're not a Mets guy, but you probably know more about the Mets just from living in New York than you want to.
I've been to their stadium, so if that counts, I've been there a couple times.
There you go. Well, that certainly counts. I've not been to the new stadium. I've been to the old one, but I've not been to the new City Field.
It's actually very nice. I like it.
And I say it's new. It's probably 10 years old, something like that.
Give or take. But I mean, Shea was around for 30?
Longer than that.
Yeah, 30, 35, 40.
Because I know the Jets played their championship game in Shea in '69.
Mm-hmm.
So I know
Shea's been around a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like Citi Field. I think it's a very nice ballpark. Unfortunately for the actual venue, the team could be a little bit better. But overall, yeah. I'll let you start the breakdown if you want.
Well, it really begins and ends with the starting rotation, and it's Jacob deGrom, probably arguably the best pitcher in baseball right now. And then you've got 3 guys behind him that are trying to reclaim glory. You've got Marcus Stroman, Rick Porcello, and Michael Walker coming over from the St. Louis Cardinals, guys that have struggled as of late, and they're looking for them to be a shadow of their former selves, and that's going to happen for this team to be competitive at all, even though they do have a nice lineup on the offensive side. They're going to get to use Cespedes as the DH, which I think is going to help. But this is really going to come down to what Stroman, Porcello, and Walker can do in my view. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Anytime, just so people need in case they need a refresher. Noah Syndergaard's still on the team. He's just having Tommy John surgery, so he's out for the year. So
right.
If you're wondering what about Syndergaard, he's out for the year. That has not changed anything. Even with the extended layoff, he's out for probably another 10 months, give or take. But looking at the Mets, on paper, this team should be pretty good, which means that they'll probably underachieve and miss the playoffs again, because that's what the Mets do. But if you want to just go through the actual rotation, you already talked about it. deGrom is he's elite. There's no other way to put it. He's absolutely tremendous. He gets no run support ever. If he was on a team like the Yankees, he'd win probably 23 games a year.
Yeah.
But, yeah, Stroman definitely, I'd say underperformed a little bit since he came over to the Mets. I didn't think his ERA was that good. He had some decent performances, but for the most part, I think the Mets wanted a little bit more from him after paying a pretty decent price to shockingly acquire him at the deadline from Toronto. Other than that, Porcello, former AL Cy Young Award winner, Rick Porcello, never really been a big fan of his. I think he's okay. I mean, whatever. Steven Matz is okay as a 4, not great, not awful. And Waka's also kind of the same way, not great, not awful. As for the bullpen, I think that's where the issues lie. I do like the acquisition of Dylan Betances, even though he has had some injuries over the last year or so, which is why the Yankees did not bring him back. He still has a high upside. Seth Lugo was definitely their best reliever last year, but I'm still not sure how good Seth Lugo actually is. And their closer is still Edwin Diaz, which is still The
Whee!
mix between, was it gasoline and kerosene? Is that a fair comparison there?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
yeah, I don't trust him to close games. You can argue that maybe he just had one bad year after he had a career year the year prior with Seattle. I'm not sold on Diaz. If I was the general manager of a team, I wouldn't want Edwin Diaz pitching in at any inning, let alone the ninth inning. And you also have Familia somewhere in the earlier innings, and that's also a potential disaster. So I'm not a fan of this bullpen at all, which is a problem because of the potentially shorter starts in comparison to most years. The lineup on paper, though, actually good, which is very rare for the Mets, who usually have an awful lineup. But you got Ramos at the catcher spot, who's a very solid hitting catcher. Alonso, who set the rookie home run record last year. You have Robinson Cano, who was actually pretty good last year before he had an injury that shut his season down early. You still have Jed Lowry somewhere in the wings, who did not play last year after they acquired him via free agency. He's still pretty good. Jeff McNeil was ridiculous last year if you want to look at his stats. I'm not a big Rosario guy, but for DH, you should be swapping between J.D. Davis, who was pretty good, and Yoenis Cespedes, who I don't think anybody knows what to expect at this point in his career.
No.
And Nimmo's decent. Conforto's pretty good at times. And, yeah, they also got Matt Adams, who's a decent lefty bat for a pinch hitting perspective. This team on paper is pretty good. I know nothing about their manager, and I don't know what to expect from their bullpen. So for that reason, I think that'll be their Achilles heels. But if this team made the playoffs, it wouldn't surprise me. I just think their bullpen is going to blow a lot of games again.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure. I'm as enamored as the offense as you are.
It's not as bad as it used to be. The Mets, pretty much for the last, 10 years since their choke job in Game 7 against the Cardinals when they still had Beltran and Delgado. I'm trying to think of a good offensive team that the Mets actually had within the last, 10, 13 years?
Well, they had a decent offense in 15 when they went to the World Series.
I thought it was more, but I thought that was more bullpen and more just Daniel Murphy becoming Babe Ruth. I'm not really sure.
Well, yeah, a part of that was Murphy in the postseason for sure. At least in the series there in the National League. So you buying or selling at 32.5, Scott?
It's tough. I'm buying it more than the Nationals, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I agree. I like Mets over 32.5 more than I like the Nats over 33.5. If
that's how I feel.
Right.
If I had to lean one way, I'd lean to the Mets over as opposed to the Nationals over. And the Nationals just gonna have a down year. I feel like they've. I don't know if you believe in the hangover theory. I believe we talked about it and you said you don't. But I have to wonder if the Nationals finally got over the hump after years of choking. Are they going to take their foot off the gas a little bit? And I think the Mets, who have been struggling ever since they made it to the World Series that one year, which was kind of an anomaly, if I'm being honest.
Sure.
This team has something to prove. And the issue is I know absolutely nothing about their manager. I know it's not Carlos Beltran. I'll tell you that much. But I don't know. You've had some distractions with the Wilpon selling the team and how they don't know how that's going to go. And somehow A-Rod and J-Lo are involved and potentially buying the team and stuff. I don't know. There's a lot of extracurricular activities going on. I think this team's decent on paper, but knowing the Mets, they tend to underachieve, I'd say 3 out of 4 times, and they'll overachieve 1 out of 4. So I think based on odds, they're looking at a team that should be pretty good, but some people get injured and then the whole season will unravel. Is that a fair assessment or fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And everything's going to be magnified this season because of the shortened season. You're playing roughly 37% of your games. So what that means is every 7-game stretch equates to about a 20-game stretch.
Yeah.
In a normal season. So
it could be good for the Mets because over 162, they tend to fall asleep for the first 90, give or take. But if I was just judging a team solely on paper, and I was saying do I think this team would do well, assuming all goes right? I'd be more inclined to say yes. I think the Nationals are in for more problems than the Mets this season, just based on paper. If I had to compare the two, this Mets roster really isn't that bad.
No, and I was looking. I've got a site that has the best 60-game stretch for each team last year and the best 60-game stretch since the
Oh,
year
the Mets were
2000.
great by the All-Star break onward. They thrust themselves back into the wild card picture.
Mets went 39-21, 18,
Yeah.
18 over between July 25th and September 28th. So
I remember that.
Yeah, over.
They were rolling before. They ended up cutting it to, I believe, like half a game in the wild card or one.
Yeah, they were close. They were close. They
wheels fell off by the end.
On fire, right?
I still remember though, bad beat. They went over their win total because they hit a walk-off home run in the 12th inning, down 1 run, which put them over the win total by a half. So yeah, that was definitely a bad beat for future bettors. But simply put, the Mets are going to be the Mets, and you can interpret that as any way you want.
Well, I don't think they win 39 games. I'll put it that way. I don't think the Mets are going to go 39-21 again.
Would it shock me if they won 35? No, it wouldn't shock me. I think that the Braves will win the division. But this team has the potential to actually put together a good year. The issue, though, is the bullpen.
Yeah.
If games were 7 innings long, I think the Mets would win 39 games.
You're gonna hear this theme a lot for over the next few days from us.
Bad bullpens are gonna kill some teams.
Yeah, absolutely right. All right, so let's go on to the last team in there, and again, we're not going to spend a ton of time on these guys.
Ooh, the Marlins. Let's go.
I got to tell you something, Scott.
You think they're sneaky bad?
I like this pitching staff for the Marlins. I think there is tremendous potential there. I think if they could put together some bats in the next few years, I think this is a team that could maybe make some noise in the National League East. I don't think it's going to be this year.
Well, they have a ton of prospects in the wings, so they're going to,
and they've got a ton of prospects coming up. Right, exactly. Marlins, by the way, as we mentioned, plus 7,000 or 70 to 1 to win the division. 24.5, Scott, is their win total. And last season, I'm just looking here, their best stretch was 29-31 from May 17th to July 26th.
That's almost mediocre.
They were 2 games under. Man, they had a hard time scoring runs for a lot of the season until Detroit went off in the absolute deep end. The Marlins were far and away the worst offensive team in the National League, and they still ended up scoring the fewest amount of runs in the National League by quite a bit as they ended the season. Although Detroit got them for worst in MLB, but they scored 615 runs, which was 63 less than the Giants, who were in 14th place there as far as runs go. So this is a team that definitely has some problems scoring runs, getting people on base, etc. But I like this rotation: Sandy Alcantara, Jose Urena, Caleb Smith, Pablo Lopez, and Jordan Yamamoto. This is a rotation full of young arms, full of live arms, and they're going to surprise some teams, Scott. This is a team that's going to have to win games 3-1. There's no other way around it. They're going to have to scratch out enough runs. And, obviously there's nothing much I like about this offense. They've got Jonathan Villar, who's okay. They've got Matt Joyce, who I think is certainly his best days are behind him.
Why do I feel like Matt Joyce has been around since 1985?
Yeah, I know. It really does feel that way. They've got kind of an up-and-comer in Jesus Aguilar playing first base. But yeah, I just don't see the offense here. Scott, give me your take on the Marlins.
Well, Jesus Aguilar has definitely had an interesting career, as he had 1 year with the Brewers where he was a borderline MVP candidate, and every other year he's been wildly mediocre. So I don't know if it's an anomaly that 1 year. It's starting to look like it. I'll tell you that much.
It really is.
To go through the team, I think that this rotation definitely has some upside. So I do agree with that. I think Caleb Smith is a solid pitcher. I think he's a pretty good lefty. Alcantara, despite his record being bad, I actually think he's a decent pitcher. Pablo Lopez, jury's still out on him. I'm not high on Urena. I'm just really not. I don't think he's that good. He had a no-hitter, I believe, a couple years ago, but for the most part, he's been pretty underwhelming. I know him more for just beating Acuna and with the first pitch of the game That's
Right.
more was what I know him for. I don't think he's really that good. Yamamoto, I actually like. I think
I do too.
Yamamoto is a good pitcher. I think he has a potential future in the MLB. The issue, once again, I think this bullpen sucks, if I'm being honest. And I know I'm sorry for using relatively colorful language. This bullpen's terrible. If you're looking through it, you have Brandon Kinsler as your closer. You got Ryan Stanek as your setup guy. If that name sounds familiar to you, he was the original opener for the Rays like 2 years ago. So
Right.
was the original opener. If that name looks familiar, he's okay. You got Brad Boxberger, who was good on the Rays. Now he's not that great.
Again, there's another guy that seems like he's been in the league since the late '80s.
I see Stephen Tarpley here, and as a Yankees fan, if he's mentioned in your bullpen, you're going to have some problems because his ERA with the Yankees was like 7. So, yeah, this bullpen's terrible. This offense, I think Isan Diaz has some potential at second base. He's okay. I like Rojas at shortstop. I think he's pretty good. But you have some prospects who've already come up who haven't really done much. Birdie at second base hasn't been good. Garrett Cooper at first base hasn't been that good. Luis Brinson's been a disaster ever since they got him in the Yelich trade. He's been terrible. Simply put, how much of the struggles offensively do you think have to do with the stadium, and how much do you think have to do with the lack of talent?
I think it's 80% lack of talent, 20% stadium.
I think that's a little bit too high. I'm probably more in the 65-35 camp. Either or, this rotation has a lot of relatively unproven commodities. This bullpen's terrible, and this team can't score. So you're a lot higher on the Marlins than I am. I think this team's going to be terrible. People are talking about how this team has some young talent, and they can potentially surprise some teams. And I do agree that there are some potential prospects who can be called up, who could provide a spark, or maybe some development that could happen with some current prospects on the roster. I just really think this team is by far and away the worst team in the NL East. I don't think this is close. Depending on who they play in their schedule, I think they're better than the Orioles. That's pretty much it. I think they're underdogs in every other game they play this season. I think they're going to win. I don't know what their win total is, but would it shock me if this team won 22 games, 24 games? No. I think this team's going to be really bad.
Win total for the Marlins is 24.5.
That's what I was saying. I'm going to lean to the under because I just think this team is going to be underdogs in literally every game they play in besides Baltimore. And they only play Baltimore 4 times.
Right.
So I'm going to take the under just based on principle.
Okay. All right. Well, and again, I'm not necessarily high on the Marlins this year. I talked about their offense is still subpar. They certainly, depending on what percentage you put on it, certainly have problems down there in that stadium. They don't have a team that's tailored to that stadium at all. I like their young arms. They have young live arms. This ain't their year. I totally agree with that. But this is a team to watch. Probably 2022 going forward. Maybe make a little bit of noise. Maybe finish mid-pack next year. Maybe or just flirt with 500.
The truth is that if you wanted to take the Marlins this year, you shouldn't even take any season props. Just find some good spots, take them on the money line. They'll be plus 160 in almost every game.
Well, and they're also a great team total underplay.
Correct.
Just in maybe playing the under in general when you have a decent starting pitching. But you're going to catch them early in the season. You might be able to catch them at 3.5 for team totals. And I think anytime you see 3.5 on the Marlins, you got to play the under.
If I had to back any pitcher on this rotation, even though Alcantara is pretty good, I do like Caleb Smith. Caleb Smith seems to be a guy who actually wins some games every now and then.
Yeah,
I think if you could find him potentially at plus 180, maybe even higher based on the Marlins' lack of cachet, I think you can potentially catch some pretty big underdog tickets if their bullpen is able to hold serve for a couple innings.
Yeah, and I think they did a good job of getting him from Arizona. I was surprised that the Diamondbacks were willing to give up on Caleb Smith.
I mean, his record wasn't great last year, but when your team's barely scoring any runs, it makes sense. I know his ERA was also 4.5 or so, but I feel like he was better than his stats indicated, and I feel like if you were actually a bettor on the Marlins, you know that Caleb Smith, when you're getting matched up against some pretty decent starters, whether they're the number 1 or the number 2 starters, and your team can't really score, 10 and 11 for the Marlins is actually not that bad.
No, not at all. He, 153 innings, 128 hits. He does give up a few too many base on balls. Give up 60 walks over those 153 innings. So you've got to cut down on that. But yeah, I like
6-4 with a 3.56 ERA at home.
Yeah,
not bad.
I like this pitching. I like this pitching staff. Look for them to make some noise. Not this year, but in the coming years. Gun to my head. You got to play them under. You got to play them under 24.5, regardless of. In spite of all the good things I've said about Miami and their pitching staff, I think it's going to be average to slightly above average this year as far as their starters go. But their offense is so far below average that they're not going to be able to drag them around.
Yeah, a quick question actually. I'm looking through some of the splits from Caleb Smith last year out of curiosity, and I had a question about just some players and what some of the stats might indicate. If you have a player, for example, Caleb Smith, he had a 2.17 ERA in April and a 3.94 ERA in May. And then he had a 3.48 ERA in July after a very, very injury-riddled June. August and September, his ERA was north of 6. Do you think that there's any consistency between players who perform well in the early months as opposed to the later months or just the start of the season? Or do you think it's all just a crapshoot from start to finish?
Well, I think you have to throw in the trade in that as well. I think that it's possible that maybe the trade affected him. You go from the middle of a pennant race with the Diamondbacks to being kind of left out in the cold with the Marlins.
Well, Smith was on the Marlins for the entire 2019 season.
I thought the Diamondbacks traded. They got him from the Diamondbacks last year.
No.
Am I crazy?
But look, according to the stats, he only pitched for the Marlins last year.
Okay. Well, then
I was just curious because you could wonder, some pitchers tend to start, even with batters, some players start hot, some players start cold. Do you think that trend will continue despite the fact that they're going to be starting in arguably the second to last month of the normal regular season?
Yeah, I think any kind of early season, late season trends are probably going to. I think they're probably going to continue because they still, they've had virtually, very little spring training. You're starting from jump with these guys, so regardless of what the calendar says, it ain't really July for in terms of baseball. So
that's why I was curious, because there's some players who, as you know, tend to start out either very slowly or very hot, and I'm curious if you think that'll continue or if nobody knows what to expect, but you know what I mean. I'm curious if that is going to work out.
Yeah, I agree. Scott? Who am I thinking of? Now I'm looking at who am I thinking of that they got from the Diamondbacks?
I'm not even sure who you're thinking of, to be honest.
All right. Well, I'm crazy. I had that in my head, man, and now I'm gonna have to do some. Now I'm gonna have to do some digging. Or did the Diamondbacks get somebody from the Marlins?
I mean, that's possible. I don't know.
All right. Well, we don't want to spend all our time having me fuck around to figure out what who did what. So yeah, Marlins not good. Decent pitching, bad offense. They're going to finish last. Under 24.5. No value there at 70-1. Don't care. They could be 170-1 or 7.
I see them at 200-1. I still wouldn't take it.
No. That's just you're lighting your money on fire. Even with a nice run, there's just too many hills to climb in that division. It's not like there's one good team that they have to suddenly beat. There's 4 good teams.
I said before, they're going to be underdogs in basically every game they play.
Yeah, that's probably true. Depending on there could be some pitching matchups where they're bare favorites, but most likely they're gonna be dogs the vast majority of the time, except the Orioles. So, all right. So Scott, give me your final order for the National League East.
So my order is going to be, all right. I'm obviously taking the Braves first. I think this team is ridiculous. There's not really much else to say. Second place, actually, I'm kind of torn between the Phillies and the Mets, if I'm being honest. I'm really down on the Nats this year. I really just don't think the Nats are going to be that good, especially with the injury histories of Scherzer and Strasburg, and now they have to play 60 games after shortened, or I don't even know how to explain the offseason, or a unique offseason
Right.
I think that's a potential disaster. I wouldn't be surprised to see one of the two get injured. And if that happens, it's DEFCON 1 at that point if one of the pitchers gets injured. You know what? Screw it. I'm going to take the Mets to come in second.
Okay.
I'm going to take the Phillies in third. I'm going to take the Nationals in fourth. And I'm going to take the Marlins winning the Tank Bowl in the National League East. That's
all right. I've got the Phillies and Mets switched. I've got Phillies in second, Mets in
I think
third.
it's really a toss-up. I think those two teams are very, very close to each other. But I'm going to give a slight nod to the Mets on rotation.
I'd like to see the odds on Scherzer and Strasburg, both of them neither one making 12 starts, or one of those two not making 12 starts. And I think there's a very good chance, given the injury history.
Do we agree with the Nationals coming in fourth?
Yeah.
I think the Phillies could come in second. I don't know. There's something about this Mets team on paper that I actually kind of like more than the Phillies.
That's fair enough. And for me, it comes down to the question. You kind of stole my thunder. I was going to talk about too the injury history of Strasburg and Max Scherzer, especially Steven Strasburg and the arm-shoulder problem that he's had.
He stayed healthy last year. Scherzer was the one who got injured.
Yeah, I know, and that's going to happen more frequently as they get older. But Strasburg, given his history, I don't see them both staying healthy. I think they both have to be healthy. I think out of their 12 starts, I think they have to win 10 of them for this team to be competitive. I think you've got to get 20 wins out of Scherzer and Strasburg.
I think you have to get 20 wins out of their starts. I don't know about their actual overall record.
No. That's what I'm saying. Out of their starts, I'm not talking about their record. No, with the bullpens and that's one-loss records are meaningless. I hate
with the shorter innings. They're not going to matter as much because the bullpen is.
I hate to break it to all you old school baseball guys out there. With win-loss records mean absolutely nothing.
Yeah,
okay?
it's a hot take for some of you, especially in today's world, which is all about analytics and stuff like that. I think they can agree with wins, and even ERA doesn't really mean as much as it used to.
No. I mean, might have been a hot take 10 years ago, and now you're just trying to bring the Luddites along who still.
What are the two that matter now? FIP and FPIP or whatever. What is it?
Well, I mean,
you like field independent pitching, and then you have another.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then there's XFIP as well,
XFIP,
which is
that's the one I'm talking. Yeah, it's FIP to the extreme.
XFIP basically eliminates the ballpark bias. You've got to they're trying to do everything they can to put the pitchers in a bubble and isolate their performance without factoring in anything else. And we'll see. They're certainly making some great strides. Then of course, if you want to get way in the weeds, you can start looking at spin rate and things like that, and who's got the breaking ball that bites, and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm sure we'll go deep in the weeds on another show. As always, we're running behind, Scott.
Some things are, at least we're consistent.
Let me ask you a question.
Do you want to speed through the AL East, or do you want to just take our time on this?
Well,
we can speed through it, honestly. I feel like not much has changed since the first time we did a breakdown on this.
Okay. All right. Let's rip through it. I was going to suggest, what? It doesn't matter. Let's do it.
Wait, you thought we're doing another video? Because we can.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought about that.
Honestly, we can honestly speed through this. There's really not many earth-shattering realizations here.
Yankees are going to win, folks. All right. See you later. See you tomorrow on the video.
The thing I was going to say about the Yankees, since we're touching upon it, the issue that I had with the Yankees the first time we did this was because of the fact that a lot of the Yankees were injured. Stanton was injured. Judge was injured. Paxton was having a cyst removed, and he was supposed to be missing the first couple of months. So that was also an issue as a health concern. And now everybody's healthy. So basically the Yankees are the team to beat. And there's a reason why they're minus 300 to win the AL East. I think the Rays are the only other team that can give them a run. And I think the Yankees have more firepower. So for that reason, give me the Yankees. I don't think the Rays are going to score enough runs to actually stay with the Yankees. I think they'll finish with a very good record. But I think the Yankees are going to run away with this thing.
Well, I probably agree with you, but I'm not going to. I think there's no value at minus 300.
No, there's no value at all. I'm just saying if I had to play this with anybody, I'd probably lean to the Rays and then try to hedge halfway through the year if this was pretty close. But I think it's a two-horse race, and I think the Yankees are the better horse. So that's how I feel about this.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to have any other take on that. It just is.
With the injuries, you had an argument with the Rays, but now everybody's healthy. So I don't know how you can really argue the Rays.
The only, and we talked about this, at least I did a little bit about it on our last show. The only saving grace, the only thing that should give other teams in the East any hope at all, is the fact that I'm not sold on this rotation. They do have Garrett Cole, but after that, it's pretty much a crapshoot. You've got Paxton. You're looking for him to be a true number two. Tanaka, who's certainly been inconsistent at best.
I don't even know if Paxton is the number two, to be honest. It might be Severino.
Well, Severino's out, dude. He's Tommy John out. He's out this season.
I forgot about that. Yeah,
he had TJ in February.
Yeah, my bad. I forgot about that.
So that you're plugging in Jordan Montgomery then,
until Germán potentially comes back from suspension. I can't believe I forgot about Severino being out for the year. Yeah, that sucks. But Germán might come back at some point in the middle of the year. Nobody really knows. And the Yankees are going to trade for somebody at the deadline, so we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, they and the Yankees are a team that's not afraid to use an opener, and they could be doing that because they do have a very, very deep bullpen. They've got Green, Tommy Connolly.
The Chad Green, it's the Chad Green opener special.
Yeah, I mean those guys could be closer setups for a few teams, and they're the fourth and fifth options out of the Yankees bullpen. Only 7 teams in the majors got more innings from their bullpen last season. I don't see that changing. The good news is they've got a hell of a bullpen. As you and I talked about, you're going to look for teams that have great bullpens, and this is a team that has a great bullpen, and that's without even getting in to the boppers that they have in this lineup. It looks like the American League All-Star team. It really does. LeMahieu leading off, which I think is a seriously underappreciated guy. Just a guy that just does it year in, year out. And then you've got Judge, Hicks, Giancarlo Stanton, Torres, Sanchez, Voit, Urshela, and Brett Gardner. Show me a weak spot in that lineup. There isn't one.
If I had to lean anywhere, it'd probably be Voit, just because he had injury issues last year and he was awful when he came back. But Stanton's underachieved since he came to the Yankees. He's barely been on the field. And I'm not a big Gary Sanchez guy, as people know who listen to my Stats All videos. I'm one of the biggest Gary Sanchez haters there is. I'm just not a fan of him as a player. But he has potential, which is the most dangerous word in sports, because keep relying on somebody to show up and they never show up, and people still think that they're a top 5 catcher in baseball, and he batted, 200 last year?
Not a good year. Not a good year.
He never gets on base, but he can hit a ball 500 feet if he wants to. So I think the lineup's insane. The bullpen's really good. I think the rotations, at least compared to the rest of the division, is decent. I think it's probably the second best rotation in the division behind Tampa. So, I'm high on the Yankees, not even just from a bias perspective. Because I'm a Yankees fan, I just think this team is clearly the best team in the division.
Yeah, let's talk about those Rays for a minute. They've got a rotation that probably is the best in the division. Charlie Morton, Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow, Ryan Yarbrough, and Yanni Chirinos.
That top 3 is filthy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's that. Assuming Glasnow stays healthy, which is a question mark, but that might be I mean, we talked about the Nationals before, which might have the best top 3. Rays have to be in the conversation.
Really close. Certainly, they're certainly in the top 5 in the majors for top 3 starting pitchers.
Definitely, yeah.
Problem with the Rays, of course, is they play in a terrible park, and they don't score a ton of runs. They're very, very average. They were 15th in runs last season, 14th in OPS, 21st in home runs. I don't see a lot of improvement, Scott. Any reason to buy on the Rays here?
They brought in a DH in Yoshitomo Tsutsugo, who was supposed to be a very good hitter in Japan. I don't know if he's going to translate at all, but they seem to try to address some of the issues they had when it came to scoring runs. Other than that, they basically brought everybody back.
Yeah. So
nothing really changed. And this bullpen's also pretty good. Chaz Rowe's a pretty good reliever. Nick Anderson's a decent reliever. You have issues with Alvarado and Castillo. Those are very, very volatile bullpen guys with huge upsides, so you don't really know what to expect from those guys. Drake's a decent reliever. Kittredge is a decent reliever. This team isn't exactly a high-scoring team, and they probably got a little bit worse when they traded Tommy Pham for Hunter Renfroe. So they probably got a little bit worse. They got a little bit more pop from a home run perspective, but Renfroe's, a 240 hitter?
Yeah.
And Pham was, a 280 hitter? I think they've got a little bit worse when it came to – I think that was a downgrade. But for the most part, yeah, this team's going to win games 4-2, 5-3.
33.5. Same win total as the Braves and the Nats. You buying or selling?
Oh, it's tough. What was the Yankees at?
36.5.
I have to lean over to the Yankees.
The Yankees equated to I think that's 103 wins over 162.
I'll lean to the over on the Yankees. They're going to be favored. They're actually going to be favored in every game they play, or at least 95% of games that they play. They're going to be favored in everything.
Out of 60 games, I'd say they're 50, I think 55.
Yeah, 55 to 57. I mean that's a decent deal if you think about that. But for the Rays, I got to lean to the over. I'm pretty low on every other team in the division besides maybe Toronto. And Toronto is the team that you don't really like. You just like how talented the young guys are, and you hope that they can piece together a pitching staff, which on paper they can't.
Is there anybody whose dad played in the major leagues that's not on Toronto's roster?
Feels that way with Biggio and Guerrero. We're both very solid players, and Bichette as well. But yeah, simply put, I got to lean to the over on Tampa because I think they're very well managed. I think their pitching staff is elite, and they seem to actually be willing to do the small stuff to win games. They'll bunt people into position, which is a crazy concept in today's society. But this team embraces the reality, which is if they're going to win a championship, they're basically the Kansas City Royals. They need to play small ball and hold their opponents to 2 runs, and they'll just win games.
Keep the line moving, man. Anything you want to talk about the Red Sox other than the fact they lost Mookie Betts, Chris Sale, and David Price?
I don't think they're any good. I think this team's going to be a disaster this upcoming season. I am a huge Devers guy, and I'm a huge JD Martinez guy. Martinez had health issues. I think Devers is ridiculous. I think Bogarts is also pretty good. Other than that, this team is destined to implode.
Yeah, agreed.
That's how I would phrase everything.
30 and a half. I'm on the under.
Under. I'd have to lean under.
And I'll tell you why. We talked about it in a little bit. I like this Jays team. I really do. They've you've got to look for this season is gonna come down a lot to how they hit. These guys had a lot of trouble last year hitting the baseball.
They're gonna need to score more runs than their opponents if they want to win, right?
Thank you very much. They brought in Travis Shaw, which is we'll see.
That's a name from the past.
Right. Yeah, it had a great 2017, very poor last year with the Brewers, and decent 2018. They've got Biggio, they've got Bichette, they got Vladdy Daddy, and
Grishik's also a decent player.
You're right. You're right, and they've got. I don't know how the DH is going to be with Tellez and Hernandez.
It's probably going to be a platoon there. I mean, they're both pretty similar guys. They're just massive power guys.
Yep. I don't hate Gurriel. They're going to have Grichuk starting center, of course. Hernandez is going to go to right. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I like this. I like this rotation. Although we're still looking for Matt Shoemaker to be any semblance of the Matt Shoemaker that he was early in his career with the Angels.
Yeah, he had some injuries, which derailed it.
Yep, I know. And we keep thinking that this will be the year. They brought in Tanner Roark. I like him. I like, of course, Hyun-Jin Ryu. That was their big pickup over the offseason. I'm not sure he can capture the magic of last season that he had with the Dodgers, but I think he is a solid presence, good left-hander there at the top of the rotation.
Are we in agreement, though, that this bullpen is pretty terrible?
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good at all. They've got
Ken Giles is okay, but getting to Ken Giles is going to be an issue.
I don't hate Baruki. Baruki is probably going to be a starter at some point.
Okay.
I don't hate him coming off an injury there in the bullpen. But then you've got Wilmer Font, you've got Bass, Dolis.
If you see Wilmer Font, that's not exactly a. You don't really want him in high leverage spots. That's what I'll say.
He's the Comic Sans of bullpen pitchers, if you will.
That's an interpretation. Yeah, I can't really argue with that.
It's a Font joke. So what are you going to do? Um,
I'm more of a Times New Roman guy, and he's definitely not Times New Roman quality.
are we are we buying or selling on the Jays at 27.5?
Oh, that's a tough one for me because I really think the Red Sox are going to underachieve.
Yeah,
But
agreed.
uh, it's tough because you want to say under, but then you remember they have 10 games against the Orioles.
They got 10 against the Orioles. They got 10 against the Red Sox. They got 4 against the Marlins. There's 24 games that they could certainly win 18 of right there.
Realistically, I think they'll chop with the Red Sox. I think they'll chop 5-5. Those teams I think are very similar to me. I think Toronto's got a better rotation, but I think that when the Blue Jays play the Red Sox, I just expect runs. That's pretty much all I'm going to expect from those type of matchups. But I do agree about the Orioles and the Marlins. I guess slight lean to the under. It's kind of a similar play to what I said before about some of these other I'd say I don't want to say underdogs. So I'm not comparing them to the Marlins, but at the end of the day, this is one of those teams where I think the markets will be pretty low on, just because of the fact that Toronto over the last couple of years hasn't really been relevant since Josh Donaldson was still there. So I don't think they're going to get much respect from the betting markets. I think the totals will get a lot of respect. I think they're going to be a huge over team, if I had to guess, just based on the lineup and the bullpen. I think you're better off picking your spots once again. I don't think you're going to get much value taking a preseason over-under. I think you're better off taking them when they're a plus 140 underdog, or you want to take them in play. So for me, I'm going to pass on the season total, but I'll definitely look to get some action on them in either some spots, or if they're down 2-0 in the first, and they're going to end up scoring 7 runs. So
Agreed. The correct answer there, by the way, is over.
Yeah,
over.
I know you were going with the over. I'm
over
not
27.5. Yeah, absolutely.
I think you agree with my idea, though. There's going to be some spots there where they're going to be down early. You can get them at like plus 200 in play. They're going to score 6 runs, and you can just kind of hope they bounce back.
Yep, absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. Okay, so Scott, the company that we work for, Winners and Wonders, is based in Baltimore, Maryland. So I feel like we owe it to them to actually talk about the Orioles. Anything to like here, buddy?
I like the location. No.
John Means.
I like the ballpark. No.
John Means. That's it. That's all I got.
The one player I actually was a decent fan of was Mancini, but he has cancer issues now, so he might not even play. I like Santander. I think he's decent as a youngster, a relative youngster. I think he's a pretty good hitter. But no, this team is bad.
Here's a quick question. Chris Davis is still alive?
I was going to say the only thing I hate more than the Orioles is Chris Davis's contract situation. I was actually going to touch upon that. Yeah, this
not good.
They're not the worst team in the league because I think that honor is being held by Detroit at this point. I think Baltimore's easily bottom 3.
Yes.
This team's terrible. We were talking about the Marlins and how they're going to be underdogs in almost every game. The Orioles might actually be underdogs in every game. Besides maybe a mean start against the Marlins.
Yeah, if something happens where
underdogs in actually like 58 of 60 games, it's going to be really bad.
If they get out of sync on rotation where they've got a 1 going against the Marlins 5, then maybe. I don't hate
that everything's the same.
I don't hate Alex Cobb, although I will say Alex Cobb has never been the same pitcher
since he left Tampa.
Since he took one off the head.
Oh, that too.
Took one
I think
off
Alex Cobb's. I'll tell you what. I think Alex Cobb's okay. I don't like his record. His record's been abysmal over the last couple of years, and Means is decent. But if you go through the actual team, the rotation for the most part is terrible.
Yeah.
The bullpen's terrible. Even though they have one guy who I think is. They have like 1 or 2 guys who I think are relatively serviceable, but for the most part, I think that their bullpen is pretty underwhelming. I think Givens is decent. Givens is the only bullpen guy who I think is really worth a damn in there, besides maybe honestly, it's pretty much it, if I'm being honest. I was going to mention maybe a Paul Fry, but not even. I mean, and Givens wasn't even great last year, but I think he's the best reliever they have. Yeah, and you look at the offense, they got Jose Iglesias. For some reason, he decided to go there. Not really sure why. but I like him as a shortstop. Austin Hayes is a youngster who maybe has some potential, but this team's just so bad.
I don't hate Hunter Harvey in the bullpen.
I don't really know much about him, to be honest. He's kind of an unknown for me. I know that he is only 25, and I know that he had a 1.42 ERA last year, so he has some potential. But based on track records, and they also lost Villar. So this team just stinks. Would it shock you, honestly, if this team won like 18 games?
No.
No.
Well, and in fact, we didn't talk about it, but their win total, you know what it is?
I'd have to guess probably around 19 and a half.
20 and a half. 20 and a half.
That would be my guess. Would it shock me if the team won 18 games? No. Would it shock me if the team won 21 games? No. I can't really touch them. The only thing I could do is just lay the 1.5 run line on the other team.
If somebody broke into your house and put a gun to your head and said you had to bet on the Marlins or Orioles to win the division, which one would you bet on?
I'm taking the Marlins.
Okay.
Because I think, because I think that
they're both 70-1. That's why.
This is a waste of a conversation, but in reality, I think that the Yankees and Rays are better than the Braves and the number 2 team, who we don't even know for the NL East.
Right.
I don't lean anywhere to lean to the Marlins, but both these teams are going to be bad. The Orioles are just basically a lock to be bad.
By the way, I think the Jays. I hate to say it, because there may be some value somewhere else in
the Red Sox this year, but they're not going to be better than Tampa or New York.
Well, that's the problem. You're catching them at 35-1 because the Yankees are minus 300. There is value on other teams, or at least perceived value. If you think,
I think if realistically, if you're going to take a team like that to win the division, you're basically hedging halfway through the year. You're hoping for a really hot first 20, 30 games.
Yeah.
You're going to hit the eject button when the Yankees are like minus 125.
Yeah, agreed. I can't argue with that. Where you play the Yankees into a better position, basically, taking somebody like the Jays. But yeah, I think this is going to be this. I think this is going to track exactly like the odds makers have it. Although I do think the Jays finished in front of the Red Sox. I'm like you. I'm really, really down on the Red Sox this season. I think they beat the Orioles, and I think that's it. I think the Jays finish in third place, and the Orioles they're awful. They're
bad.
No
I mean, we're gonna get to Detroit, which we talked about a couple months ago. We're gonna get to them in tomorrow.
Nope.
Thursday
on Thursday. Yeah, we're gonna do it because we've just absolutely crushed it at golf. We're gonna go back to the well again on that tomorrow and talk a little golf. All right. Well, any final thoughts are on the East, Scott? What's the best value? What's your favorite play as far as the bets that we have, as far as the win totals or the odds to win the division?
That's a pretty tough one. For value, if I had to go anywhere, this might sound a bit crazy. What'd you say the Yankees over was again?
36.5, which equates to about 103. Over 162 game season.
The truth is, it's a lot, but the Yankees are literally going to be favored in every game they play. So it's really tough because I think Tampa potentially has some value at the over, but this team can't really score. I think it'll probably be the Yankees over because the team's healthy, and I know for a fact almost every game they play, they're going to be minus 180, minus 230.
Well, yeah, of course, a lot of those you're paying the Yankees tax, but they're
tax. But that's what I'm saying. If you wanted to compare a team that's projected to win pretty much every game they play, like if games were determined solely based on betting spreads, the Yankees would end up 59-1.
That's true.
It's just the way it is. With the one loss maybe being when Strasburg pitches against the Yankees in like game 2 of the season.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could, you've got some quality pitchers.
I'm exaggerating,
but you know Braves as well. But yeah, I know what
I mean. Like you're going to need the Yankees to lose as some heavy, heavy chalk if they're not going to go over. So for me, I'm going to lean to the over. They're going to be buyers at the deadline. That this team should win. If I told you the Yankees are going 40-20, would you really be shocked? No, not at all. So for me, especially with the Red Sox getting worse. If I had to have one play, I'd probably take the Yankees over. Am I going to play anything personally? No. My favorite play, though, is the Braves to win the division.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's also my favorite play. which it kind of sucks. But yeah, it does.
For a win total, I kind of went around in a circle there. For a win total, I would say the Yankees over, just because I think the Yankees should win 40 games. But the Braves to win division at plus 215, they should easily be, what, plus 120?
I'm thinking more plus 150, but
I said 140. Yeah, I mean, this team is by far the best team in the division.
By the way, Yankees' best 60-game stretch of last season, 42-18.
Yeah, I think 40-20 sounds reasonable, especially with Garrett Cole now in their rotation.
Yeah,
I mean, that's filthy.
That's huge. I like the Braves plus money, and I also like them at over 33.5. I think somebody's got to win games in that division. I think it's going to be the Braves. So
that's fair.
All right, bud. 1 down, 2 to go. Wrapped it up in pretty good style there. It helps that was a kind of a much different
handicap, to be honest.
Situation. Yeah, absolutely agreed. So, any final thoughts on the East, Scott?
Go Yankees.
There you go. All right, guys. Well, we appreciate everybody joining us today. As we start our first of 3 days, taking a look at the major leagues and the win totals and the odds to win the division.
So, yeah, but we got the Winners and Whiners All-Star break tomorrow as we're switching gears to golf before we resume the rest of the break.
That's right. So make sure you tune in tomorrow. Check out our thoughts for the upcoming golf tournament. Scott, where are they?
The Rocket Mortgage Classic in very, very warm Detroit at this time of the year.
Beautiful. Good time to be in Detroit, everybody. Should be fun. We'll take a look at that one, the Rocket Mortgage Classic, and then we'll be back to do our dives into baseball on Thursday and Friday before heading back and having Winning Willie join us on Saturday to talk a little NASCAR. So for myself, for Scott Reichel, for all of us over here at winnersandwhiners.com, again, gives me an opportunity to plug winnersandwhiners.com, the straw that stirs the drinks, the ones that pay our bills. So make sure that you stop by and check them out, doing great previews, great content on all the sports going on in America, including some pretty good looks at baseball right now. So stop by, check out winnersandwhiners.com and our sister site over there at statsalt.com as well. For myself, for Scott, for all of us here at Winners and Whiners, appreciate you guys stopping by, checking out the show today. And, we'll be back and do it tomorrow. We'll be back and do it every day, as a matter of fact, except Sunday. And we appreciate you guys doing your thing, dropping us a comment or two, letting us know who you're on this season and where we've made our mistakes. All right. So until tomorrow, you guys have a great day. Stay safe, everybody. Stay healthy. Hope all your bets cash tonight. And we'll be looking forward to doing it one more time, firing it up again tomorrow. Everybody take care. See you later. Bye-bye.